And we're pulling up some of the recalls for the week. There's clearly a big substantial issue. And we're looking at major car manufacturer issues recalls for 177,000 SUVs. And there's never a shortage. Volkswagen's at it again. Now, we've seen Volkswagen pump out a lot of products. Some has been good over the years and some certainly not so good, but the quality and the reliability has certainly been going down, and a lot of their vehicles rank as some of the lowest reliability. According to consumers reports, our own personal experience is not that great either. Like, they're loaded with a lot of great technology, and a lot of the modern day Volkswagens look great. They have all the flair and the pizzazz. And remember, they're part of the VAG, the Volkswagen Audi group, so what happens in Volkswagen often trickles over in Audi and Porsche. But Volkswagen here has had some strong struggles. Right here, the major car manufacturer issues recalls for 177,000 SUVs. We have another article here with the same thing, 177,000 SUVs. And what we actually have is basically the Atlas and the Atlas Sport Cross of 2024 and 25 model years, with an engine cover. According to NHTSA, this engine cover can come loose or it can melt and burn after service, if you will. Now, on that note, this isn't the only shenanigans that Volkswagen's involved with. We've heard of DieselGate, that's coming to the latest and the greatest again. Of course, we heard about the CEO who was involved in that scandal. Volkswagen couldn't sell cars in North America, so they had to allegedly cheat the system and provide a software patch that would allow them to show that they actually had better emissions once they plugged in to do these emissions testing, which happens, for example, air care and a lot of these other areas. Clearly, Volkswagen did not have the numbers to match what their test results were showing, and then it flushed out later that their cars were coughing out a lot more pollution. Now, that was the Volkswagen diesel scandal, but you know what, there's more. But this is all mounting on the top of many other challenges. You know, I explained recently that I drove an Atlas and I was very uninspired. I love the interior, the quality, the detailing. I love some of the tech, and I'm not a big tech guy. I love buttons and knobs, but this vehicle was dressed up quite nice. It had, you know, a nice flare and blend of accent lighting and some nice tech that looked high quality. The drivability of it wasn't amazing. And what I found after driving that vehicle for a while, it had this partial throttle surge, and it just felt like a weird drivability issue there. According to this article here by MSN, they're saying that the Volkswagen dealers will remove that cover free of charge and you should be on your way. Now, this is unfortunately all on the backs of other recalls. There's another one where they warned of a major issue, potentially dangerous display error impacting some of their electric vehicles, and some of which, of course, naturally were related to the IDs. And Volkswagen SUVs had a recall where the airbag, the front passenger airbag, would not inflate. And a lot of that also had to do with a wiring problem underneath. There said the car maker recalled more than 271,000 vehicles, Atlas SUVs from 21 to 24 model years, and 2020 to 24 Atlas Sport Cross SUVs. They said the wiring under the front passenger seat can develop a fault, which inadvertently then creates this lack of possibly blowing when you actually need it, because a lot of the wiring underneath there senses the weight that there's somebody in the seat, and problems with that are nothing new. Volkswagen's had a lot of electrical problems. Let's just expand on this. Volkswagen recall SUV flagged for an engine fire risk. Recalls over 100,000 vehicles over fire risk. ID4 and Q4 e-tron EVs recalled due to rollaway risk. I mean, the list goes on and on. You can talk about all kinds of different issues, but VW has had their share. And Volkswagen's warning that if you have a vehicle with these issues or you're subject to that recall, that you should avoid using that front passenger seat if at all possible. But that's really odd, right? You paid a lot of money. If it's a 5-seater and you remove one seat, that's 20%. Why don't they give us a 20% discount? We can't use that seat, right? That's what we paid for. 1,730 warranty claims related to that passenger airbag. Now, there's another issue where they issued 60,490 recalls February 28th of this year, concerns that the display certain gear options may not work. So in other words, you put it into gear, it may not function as intended. And the recall included 21 to 23 Volkswagen ID4 cars, that's their EV cars, 22 to 23 Audi Q4 e-tron. According to NHTSA, Q4 e-tron Sportback vehicles were also impacted by this recall. The gear indicator issue stems from a software complication. The auto safety regulator said Volkswagen took full ownership I mean, we're seeing other problems. Earlier this month, Volkswagen issued another recall for 30,000 vehicles in the US due to a rear view mirror display not working properly. And I mean, I'm from a generation, I'm an old guy, but I'm from a generation where you would learn how to back up with your mirrors. Now everybody relies on all these sensors, and I think that's part of the problem here. That's a root causal issue, is that we're relying on this technology now. Too many people have now grown used to using this technology, using the backup cameras, using all these sensors to tell us we're too close, and not using this, and their ability to actually steer and navigate their vehicle. And we're dealing with a Q3 by Audi, Volkswagen Tiguan, and Arteon, and specific models were 22 to 24 Tiguans, 23 Arteons, and 24 to 25 Q3s. Due to this issue, the rear view camera image reads not display as intended. A rear view camera image is not available when reversing. It's always these little nickel and dime things, but you know, regarding that, even not putting into gear or not selecting the right gear. We heard about the Jeep Grand Cherokee with the rotary knob a few years ago, where the driver thought they put it into gear, walked around, and he was that famous actor, I believe, from Star Trek, and it ended up rolling into him and crushing him into his gate at his home. And unfortunately, he passed away from that. It's no laughing matter. If it's not the giving you the gear that you select, that could be a bigger issue. Last year as well, 6,000 Passat Gold and Arteon model years in Australia, made between 29 to 23. Lots of problems here for Volkswagen. And as you can see, this list goes on. I could keep going on and on. By the way, these are some recent recalls. So if you're driving a modern late model Volkswagen ID, some of their EVs, their Atlas, even some of their other smaller SUVs, and hey, even a Passat or any of that, just know that there could be a looming issue. So always give NHTSA, type that in your header bar, NHTSA, and be sure to Google, put in your VIN or your make and model and year, and it'll give you everything. Complaints, it'll give you problems related to some of these recalls, issues, and it'll give you the details. Okay, let's take a look and see what else we can find in the tickle trunk for problems today. Oh, look, and Chinese cars quality issues may cost Russian sales. That's not a shocker. You know, we know that a lot of the Chinese-made cars, they're innovative, but they're cheap. And it looks like still there's some quality issues related to some of these new. We know a lot of the EVs are coming from China now. Let's keep looking here. GM CEO says electric car issues are absolutely in the past. Time will tell. We'll be talking about this real soon, I'm sure. GBN suggests that major car brand issues urgent recall notice for 461,000 vehicles over serious crash fears. Okay, well, let's dig into this a little bit further. Okay, and this one looks like it impacts General Motors. 461,839 GM vehicles included in the US. The transmission control valve may fail and cause the rear wheels to lock up. That's terrifying. Can you imagine driving down the highway doing 65 miles an hour down, you know, Southern California highway, and all of a sudden the wheels lock up and sends you into a skid into the Jersey barriers. Does not sound like a good day by any stretch of the imagination. General Motors recalls, see 70,000. They've had their share too. Faulty grill, crash risk, you know, grill falling off, loose grills. 450,000 with a low brake fluid warning. Hey, there's another problem. 6,000 EVs in Canada. 2,000 General Motors Equinox electric vehicles recalled. 52,000 vehicles in Canada for crash triggers. But I'll tell you right now, there's been no shortage of, we know their 8-speed autos and some of their newer transmissions have had problems with General Motors. And on top of it, a lot of engine issues. We've heard of this new L87, 877,000 engines are on the hook for getting replacements because of bad rod bearings and quality controls. Their lifter issues. We've heard of tailgates coming apart at the seams. We've heard of all kinds of challenges, fire risks, electronic troubles. You know, remember they had their infotainment system, they had to get it reprogrammed and actually had to do a halt production last year on some of their vehicles because their infotainment system wasn't functioning properly. You know, a lot of issues, and General Motors working on a lot of bugs, but they're certainly going through their share of troubles. Remember the Chevy Cruze? Ouch, blowing holes in pistons, bad transmissions. I talk about General Motors a lot. Do they have some good vehicles? I've always thought, you know, I'd love the big trucks, the GMs, and I've always said the bigger the vehicle in General Motors, not necessarily the better. I'm not all about driving the bigger is better, but they're generally a better made, heavier duty product. So as you scale down, the smaller vehicles you go down, usually you get the lower levels of quality, in my own personal opinion. What do we got here? Stellantis ready to axe brands and fix US problems, the CEO says. We know they're having problems. Stellantis has been the butt of many her butt-foiled jokes this year. They've had their problems here. These batteries, they don't like cold weather. You don't say EVs with battery problems in the winter. This one here, and now I've said that Mazda is one of the most reliable brands right now, and I stand by that. But I very explicitly tell you the 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engines gives you a good bang for buck. It's a larger displacement. You know, everybody's going with these crappy little 2-liter engines, but Mazda rocks the 2.5 Skyactiv engines. They're quite reliable. You can get them in NA, so no turbos. You can also get them in a turbo, and even the turbos are pretty dependable. You can also get a manual gearbox, 6-speed. Oh, see, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Okay, 6-speed manual in certain cars like the Mazda 3s as a base feature. You can also get 6-speed automatic in most of their vehicles, but those are the smaller vehicles, the awesome ones. The CX-30, I love it. The CX-5, I like those too. The CX-50 is probably my favorite vehicle. The CX-50 is reliable, it's squat, it looks stout, looks aggressive. I love the detailing. It gives you just enough tech that you don't feel like you're driving something from 1972. It's also pretty reliable. Okay, here we have Mazda recalls. There's lots of recalls, but what you'll notice is 150,000 vehicles affected. You get CX-70, CX-90, that's their full-size ones. That has that new inline 6-cylinder engine. CX-90, more recalls. Do not drive. 77,000 vehicles. What I have here is Mazda recalls 80,000 CX-90 and CX-70 for startup issues affecting multiple safety features. Very, very sad. We also have a dashboard malfunction in certain SUVs that may trigger limp mode and illuminate the check engine light. And the CX-90 for restart may fail to restart after idle stops. So if you're sitting there, you know, the vehicle stops, it may not come back to life, prompting a recall for the update the hybrid system software. So the first one, of course, is related to, there's about 71,000 or 80,000 in total, 71,000 for the 90s and of 24 and 25, and the rest are CX-70s. And they're saying the SUVs potentially have a problem where the car display multiple warning messages on startup. Could activate a check engine light. That's an issue. The second recall goes into limp mode with a multitude of different lights. Again, we're talking about 26,000 examples of the CX-90 of 24 model year. And the model year of 25, about 5,000 vehicles are impacted by that as well. And the third recall is failure on restart. So I already mentioned hybrid system malfunction would may be the warning light you're going to see. Like, come on, Mazda, you can do better than that. But I have faith, and a lot of these problems come because it's a new model, right? I mean, I've said this about Toyotas and Mazdas and every car. I don't care what it is. It could be a Ford or a GM. The first, sometimes 3 years of any new major model change will come with a few little glitches. Ultimately, wrapping it up, they're talking about, it basically means a reflash of things, the PQM, DSEM, as well as the ECU and TCU and all those electronics, those modules, the electronics that control all the features. It might mean just a reflash and programming. And as we're saying, we're not seeing catastrophic engine failures like we're seeing in General Motors. We're not seeing Ford dropping valves. This is Mazda. The worst we've got in a new model right now is just a reflash, and it looks like some electronic glitches or bugs. But I believe that speaks a little bit to the overall quality. When you talk and you look at General Motors, granted they sell a lot of vehicles, they have a lot of problems. Same with Ford, they're one of the leading kings of recalls. Cases like this where it's a refresh and you get glitchy lights and problems like that, clearly that's a little bit more of a technology overload. There's too much going on. There's a lot of programming involved behind all of these vehicles. And I've said this before, I'm not opposed to advancement in making cars better, safer, and certainly in some cases more reliable with the modern programming and electronics. But all this technology, I feel like there might have been a bit of a tipping point, and this is a classic example of so much tech going on, so many issues that are coming from that technology, that it begs a question, can't we get to a simpler time? We heard about the most recent. Volkswagen, the CEO finally said that they're done with all of those haptic and capacitive controls in their cars, and they're saying they're going back to nut buttons and knobs for basic controls for heater and stereo. Controls that customers wanted in the first place, and Volkswagen decided that they would advance and reduce the controls and make it all integrated in their in their control and touch swipe systems and their center screens, but a lot of the buyers weren't having it. Buyers were leaving. Buyers were saying, I'm going somewhere else. But what we're finding now is Volkswagen has decided to go back and saying it's not a cell phone, it's a car. So with all of that said, everybody, be sure to check out right there. Have you seen last week's news? Of course, where we're talking about some of the big issues from last week. And naturally right there, be sure to check out 6-Speed Car Reviews, building the channel. And I hope to bring some amazing, gritty new car reviews, my style. Hope to see each and every one of you in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye, everybody.